Hello and well met. This is Layron with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today I'm going to do something a little different, take a little change, a little off course. I'm going to take a look at the Alien rule set. It's been quite some time since I visited this, I think over a year, so I wanted to kind of see where it's at. I have some content loaded here, so if I go over to my library on the right hand side, I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and here are some of the modules that I have loaded and some of the supplements. So we have different adventures that come with the rule set and also from the accessories and the supplements. Then you have the basic game core mechanics. So you have the alien game mother section, and then you have the player section for like building characters and such. I have a couple map packs that are probably not necessary, but I'll use them occasionally to supplement an adventure if you need to show something in particular. Mostly this rule set is more cinematic. You can kind of get by with just photos, and they use zones and stuff for combat. So if you're used to playing like D&D and such, it plays a little different. You can still try to kind of play it like D&D, but it's really not the same experience. And you may not necessarily want to play it that way, or you could play it any way you want. But just remember that it doesn't quite play the same as a traditional tabletop game in regards to fantasy type games. It's got a different approach. The author or the person who wrote this adventure, they actually put a section in here in the reference manual to help with character creation. So there was a note that came out initially that was essentially the way that you'd build your character in the actual using the setting. But what would happen is that people were not quite getting the Fantasy Grounds part of it. So there is a section here that was created for the community, I believe, because there came at some point there was a little confusion about character creation. I think that the author had put in some sort of ways to kind of make tips for it, so you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel when it comes to Fantasy Grounds. So there's some things, but there's some core concepts with building characters. So they have it listed here in the reference manual. So if you own the core rulebook, if you go to the character section under core concepts, it'll start to kind of explain the basics. So you choose a career, you spend points on your attributes, you spend points on your skills, you choose a talent for your career, you pick your name, you decide on your appearance, you decide on your own personal agenda. You can choose your buddy and rival, which I do recommend that because there are some good roleplay opportunities with that. And it kind of adds to the drama and the stress of the situation. When you got friends that are there to help you and kind of back you up, or you got somebody that's always kind of messing with you, you know, those are the kinds of things that make these scenes more interesting. You then pick your gear and a signature item. So maybe you have a Bowie knife or some kind of rifle that you use, and then you roll for cash. So that's the base level of that. I'm going to take a look at the character sheet. We're not going to have time to go over and build a character, but if I pop open this character sheet, we can take a look at this, and this is how it looks in Fantasy Grounds. Pretty nice looking. It's pretty well themed for the actual rule set. You have the different tabs where you can build. There's your panic dice, so it'll roll for those. And then down here are your dice sets. If you subscribe to the Fantasy Grounds art subscription, you'll have more assets for like maps and such. There are some sci-fi things. Also, if you buy the dice collections, you'll have access to different forms of dice. So this is just kind of a basic set here with a little bit of decor. I think this is the Wizard Rot set. But if you like fancy dice and such, you can get that through. That's more of a Fantasy Grounds thing. But essentially, your character creation doesn't look too bad. It's not super complicated. I'm not going to go through it at this point, but it is something that you'll have to face when you want to use the rule set. But just remember, it kind of plays more like a movie, like an act, than it does like a D&D game. So it's not something that you would necessarily use like a traditional D&D game. Although, if your GM wants to run it that way, you can try doing that. There's nothing wrong with it. But there's some maps that I've loaded that have grids on them and those sort of things, so I can more easily set this up to be used for exploration or maybe even some traveling, navigation, those sort of things. So there is a new book coming out. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, but it's already in pre-order. So if you're already a fan of Alien and you already have all the books, you'll know what I'm talking about. What's coming up is the Building Better Worlds campaign. So what that is essentially another type of book that you can use to help round out your world. It goes over colonists. It talks about different planets. I think it gets into the alien species, and it also gets into other mechanics and stuff that you may not be too familiar with or use very often. So essentially, it's going to give you more expanded information and content so that you can build your own stuff. And I think that's a really good approach for the setting, because it has, your core books. You got the Marines book, or, the Colonel Marines Operations Manual. You have a couple of main adventures. And then, of course, you have the main rule set. So if you have this other, because I have the Heart of Darkness, I believe. I don't know if I actually loaded that. Let me take a look. So if I go to the activation window, so I haven't loaded the art of this one yet, the Heart of Darkness, but I own that one. That was the last one that they put out. And then there's the Alien Rule Set Manual, which I recommend. So if you go to that and you click on the reference manual, this is what I was telling you about for the role-playing game. So this is going to help you get started and help you get going. So this is like your libraries, kind of helps you navigate through character creation, and it gives you the Fantasy Grounds version. So this is really nice that the publisher made this for us. So when you're going through character creation, you're going to be able to kind of understand what's going on more from the Fantasy Grounds character sheet and the interface standpoint, and even go through the spaceship part of it and the party sheet, like how to use that. It talks about how to do combat and targeting and all that good stuff. And then it even has some things about your effects and modifiers. So there are some effects that can be utilized in the game. So you can create custom effects, and those are in the interface. So if I open up on the upper right, there is an icon up here. This is called effects. It looks like a person with stars around it. And if you look at this, they've already built these for us, or at least a majority of the main ones, that you can drag and drop into the combat tracker when you need to do this. So that's that. I think some of the lighting is a little wonky. Most of it's based on fantasy rule sets, so there's really no flashlight or nothing like that yet. But there's people have asked about that, like, hey, instead of having a lantern or a candle, can I have a beam of light that kind of flashes in a directional thing? I don't think Fantasy Grounds can support that at this time. The other thing was, I want to say there was something else kind of related to the line of sight stuff. So traditionally, though, the game is not necessarily played like that with the fog of war and stuff, but you can kind of do however you want. But it kind of gets into the NPCs and the xenomorphs. It talks about the equipment here. So this is called the Rule Set Manual. This was created as an additional guide for people who are playing in Unity and Fantasy Grounds, because this exists on the actual Atlassian guide. But it's nice to have it within Fantasy Grounds, and then even having the graphical content that's going to help you build characters and kind of understand the interface a little better. So that was a good move on their part. I was pretty happy to see that. I know when I first purchased it, I'd said something about that, and the developer got on it right away and kind of added that. So that was pretty pleased with that. That was a good it was a very good, slick job that they did to get this out and to kind of make it more useful to people that are going to be using this around the table. So this is a really cool thing. So you got the Heart of Darkness, Destroyer of Worlds, Chariot of the Gods, and there are some little smaller ones that come along with the other accessories. So if you buy one of these other ones, you get a couple small modules. And then I do have some kind of token kind of stuff that I put in myself. So if I go to the assets, I have all kinds of stuff that I've added to Fantasy Grounds. So in this case, like this is just some artwork I found. I know that someone had made a plugin or some sort of extension that gives you this tracker type thing, which is cool. I don't remember if it's still active, if it was for Classic. I don't recall, but yeah. So I made a bunch of assets for the game in case I wanted to play it and run it, and that's probably some of the things you'll have to do because there's not a ton of books out. I do see some stuff online, like in a Facebook group. So on Facebook, there's a group that puts out like free adventures, and all you'd have to do is enter it into Fantasy Grounds yourself, and maybe add a little bit of occluders, line of sight, that sort of thing. But the one thing I'm kind of excited about is the new IP that's coming out, and that's the Builder Better Worlds, and that is on the Free League website. And I'll have a link for that at the end of the video. But it's going to have some pretty neat features that is going to help complement the setting, and it's going to kind of go into the colonization parts, you know, the kind of the day-to-day stuff, because it kind of focuses more on people that run these ships, and you know, they have all this, maybe miners and those sort of things, and the corporations and the Marines, but they didn't really get into the, you know, the more of the mundane aspects of this world. So that book is going to help us. So that is going to be a fun thing. I'm looking forward to that. I imagine it should be out by the end of the year. They just put out the pre-order the last couple of months, so I imagine it'll be available soon. I don't have any dates or anything like that, but Building Better Worlds looks like it's going to be something I'm definitely going to invest in and take a look at. I think that it's important to have more content for this particular world. There's so much stuff that you can do, but this is kind of a ongoing rule set, but it doesn't grow as fast as, like, you know, Pathfinder or something like that. So that's part of it. If you go to the Free League website, there are some character sheets, and then there's a ship sheet, and there are some like PDFs to kind of help you, and even some maps. So if you're looking for resources, there's some pictures like wallpapers, and then there's also maps and some sheets to kind of give you familiar with the game. A lot of that stuff will be in Fantasy Grounds, but there might be a couple things that will help you out, you know, especially if you're going to play around a table. And then on the Alien website, which is kind of like a dedicated website for that, they're talking about the Building Better Worlds. Basically, there's a trailer out for it. There's a newsletter that you can sign up for if you're really chomping at the bit for the content. And I want to say that the content itself, it looks pretty comprehensive. Like they're going to give you a lot more information regarding stuff that's not directly related to the corporations and to the Colonial Marines. So it's something that will help with the building of your own campaign settings, that sort of thing. So that's helpful when you are trying to run a new adventure. But I had put these assets together a long time ago for Alien Day, but I still kind of think that, you know, there's a lot you can be done. Like in this case, this is a Fantasy Grounds version of this with this lander type thing. But I went ahead and put the, you know, change the visibility, put that green screen thing on there. And then here I've got this kind of like this. Let me turn off those clouds for right now. So this is kind of like an alarm. And then we have the kind of put some smoke here behind to make it look like it's landing. Maybe it's steam coming off of it as it's landing. But I did put line of sight on here and kind of use it for like a cinematic thing. And then your crew will be up here. And then the back is the cargo. And then if you, if you use a strategic map like this, you might be able to kind of play like you would in other rule sets. But essentially, like here's a door. You can open that up. And then I put the line of sight and all the effects on these things here. So when I close this, it kind of goes back to kind of a shady, dark cockpit. But when you open this up, the light spills in from inside the crew cabin. So this is just some stuff, examples of the type of thing you can do if you want to go all out and not just use the green maps, because the maps that come with this are kind of more or less like this green up here, and not so colorful and just two-dimensional type thing. So I'll go ahead and bring up one of the assets from the rule set. So I'm going to go to the images area, and then here's something I added. I added the xenomorph. So I put this like this light here, kind of like a emergency light, and some fog here. So you kind of use that for your cinematic to tell the story, and you not always have to have a map, but you can use stuff like this to help illustrate, things that are going on in your game. And then here is, let's see, I want to go to a map that's more actually in the adventure. So here's Hadley's Hope. That's just a picture. And let's go to, here's the Novigrad Station. Here's a deck plan. So that's kind of what you'll get in the Alien rule set. So you get these kind of like these grid, black and white, blueprint type things. And then if you, there's a map legend that kind of tells you what these mean on the symbols. And a lot of the maps kind of show, like a deck plan. So it's not really too fancy. So if you want to, you can kind of use these as your guideline and then make your own maps using assets in Fantasy Grounds or importing them from another tool. So it's kind of up to you how you want to handle it. But these are the types of maps that come in these particular adventures. And I think they've done the line of sight on some of these, depending on what they're for. But in most cases, you probably won't have that because you're kind of running it like D&D, but you would be using it at, differently than what it was designed for. So there may not be any line of sight and those sort of things, to be expected in the rule set, because it kind of plays more cinematically, more theater of the mind, or just like an image that you use, and then you just kind of have zones for targeting and such. So it's not quite the same experience unless you really want to go the extra mile and put in the extra work and set up your own map. So it's not impossible. It just makes it to where you're going to have to put in a little extra effort if you want that kind of experience. Like, for example, I put all these images in here, these assets that I had found a long time ago, to kind of be able to show those as the adventure goes on. So that's why I have all these images in here that I kind of made and put in here myself. So that's the lander again. And I do like the green, kind of this green effect, but this is the type of thing that you'll probably run into once you start creating your own map. So it's just a matter of how much time and how much of an effort you want to put into running a campaign in Alien. So it's plays differently than a D&D or Pathfinder, but it definitely has its place. Like I said, the battles are more thematic and not so strategic, like in regards to like a map, more or less like managing resources, distance, that sort of thing, almost like space battle. It has its own distances and zones, and it's just a little different. So it might, if you're traditionally using a D&D type setting, yeah, no problem, Thilger, yeah. But yeah, it's just a matter of getting into the setting and figuring out what's important to you when you're running your campaigns in Alien. But the new IP that's coming out, I think probably my guess would be by October, but I could be wrong, like by Thanksgiving. Yeah, by Thanksgiving, Halloween or something like that. But yeah, so these are just kind of things that I'm using for to kind of embellish the rule set, make it a lot more interesting. But you do have, the reference manual in the actual books that you get. Here's some stuff about v4.4.3, which is the Alien Day. And then you have, I have some links here that goes to a message or to a salvage generator and a green screen where you can make screenshots of those and put those in your game. So that's pretty cool. So that would make it to where you can generate your own content and then import it into Fantasy Grounds, kind of use it for your games to help supplement it. So they're kind of like tables, interactive tables, and then you go and you generate content based off of whatever the input is. And you can actually download the generator too, but you essentially go in there and you can refresh it and it generates a new thing. You can hit enter and then it will regenerate your basic mission, and it'll give you some affiliations, some orientation, location, distances, and difficulties. It tells you the compensation. So these are like little mission generators that are online. So that is called, it's called perchance.org, and the sub URL is Alien Salvage Mission Generator is one. And then there's another one that gives you just a system green screen, which you can you can have it you can type help in there. It's almost like an old Unix system that you can use for the game. So I'll put the links for this I think at the end of the video, but nonetheless, there are lots of third-party tools to help supplement the game. The other thing is that Alien came out a couple years ago. I don't see a whole lot of chatter on it, but it is a really gritty kind of rule set. It's not made for I don't want to say it's like fairies and elf ears. It's more gritty, dark, kind of moody. Well, some of the things I like is the cat. I think you can play the cat in one of the adventures. There's just, what kind of cool tools can you incorporate to help make your job easier as the hive mother or the game mother. So these are just some things that I wanted to touch on, because this rule set really needs a chance to kind of grow and get exposure out there. And I know it's available on other platforms, but I think they did a pretty good job adapting this particular rule set to Fantasy Grounds. I think the next video I do, I'll actually build a character. I think that would be most useful, because that's where a lot of people would stumble and kind of run into some questions and such. So I might do that. I'll reach out to the person that maintains the rule set. I think is Valier's rule set, and I'll talk to him about it and say, hey, that's how do I do this? Or I'll just kind of get with him and see it, or maybe he'll do a show with me where I can actually, he and I can build a character together. So just because the rule set's been out for a couple years and it's not being utilized doesn't mean it's not good. It just means it's not quite as popular as like Pathfinder 2 right now or something like that. So it's just kind of a thing. It requires a certain kind of attitude and mood, and it kind of has a different way of playing out. You just got to get used to the mechanics. I mean, you don't have a ton of different dice. You have a 10-sided and a 6-sided and stress dice. You don't have a bunch of dice like traditional games. So it really just depends on what you want to do. So the main thing I wanted to talk about, though, was that there is some new content going to be coming out. I'm pretty excited for that. I want to potentially show, let's see if we can look at that, or at least I'm going to go down the list of changes that are coming, because I didn't set up the screen for the browser. But essentially, you're going to have you have like maybe 4 or 5 different things on the store, on the Fantasy Grounds store. So I put a link for that in there. Those are the official content. But then you're also going to get, when you get the new thing, you're going to have some more content, so it will help you when you want to make your own scenes and you want to build your own world building type thing, and you'll make your own planets and have your own espionage and aliens and stuff. So they do go into that a little bit with the alien kind of xenomorph thing, where you can kind of find out more about that and also have different varieties. So it's not just the same old xenomorphs over and over. Let's see. What else can we get into here? Okay, so some of the things that you're going to get are you're going to kind of learn a little bit more about the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and how sinister they are. It's kind of going to point that out a little bit more in Building Better Worlds expansion. So some of the features include rules for explorers and colonists, more gear and ships, so that's good, and also extrasolar species, so there'll be other creatures that you can deal with, and maybe even viruses. And then how Building Better Worlds will kind of redefine the alien RPG experience on Fantasy Grounds. So it just kind of going to open up more of the world building aspects, I believe, as opposed to just combat and that sort of thing. So if you're going to play a campaign and not a cinematic thing, I think that that content there will help a lot more. And I mean, it will help in both cases, but I think that having it for a campaign is very useful, more so than a little cinematic thing, because those are more like 1 or 3 shots and not so much a huge drawn out adventure. So this is just scratching the surface of this rule set. I mean, I haven't touched it in quite a while, so it's kind of reaching back, updating it, seeing where I left off in the notes. And I think my best thing I'm going to do is just record a video of me creating a character, and then I'll edit it so it's not over an hour long, and just kind of go into the basics of that. I'm not sure. I don't even know if anyone wants the content or not. So if I don't get a lot of response or views, I'll probably just move on to something else. But I just wanted to, just kind of check things out. It's one of my favorite rule sets. I just haven't had time to delve into it as much as I'd like to. So without going too much more into just yapping the whole time, I think I'll let it go at this. But just give it a try. Check out Alien. Check out the rule set. There's not a 50,000 books out yet. There's maybe 5 or 6 different books, and there's a new one coming out in the next month or so. And then, of course, you have the board game, and then there's a bunch of face-to-face assets too. So if you're going to move to a face-to-face table, it'd probably be a little simpler than other games because there's either too much content or too complex. So anyways, take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.